Hudson Taylor, God's Adventurer, Chapter 2. What if prayer doesn't work? Drainside Hole, where Hudson Taylor lived, was called that simply because it was beside a drain. Officially, the drain went by the name of Canal, but to the people living in the rows of tiny cottages built on either side of the narrow ditch, it was just a drain. Very convenient it was, too, to the inhabitants of those cottages. By merely opening their front doors and throwing hard, they could dispose of all their rubbish without giving themselves any further trouble. Dirty paper, cabbage leaves, potato peelings, and rotten vegetables floated about on the water unashamed, providing admirable targets for street urchins throwing stones. If the drain stank unpleasantly and was a danger after dark to those who staggered unsteadily from the public house, which is like a bar, opposite Hudson's house, the advantage of this trash bin was more than compensated for these minor defects. To Hudson, the contrast between this poverty-stricken, unattractive area and the beauties of the Yorkshire town near the Pennine range from which he had come was sharp. How different, too, was his run-down little bed-sitting room from the comfortable home over his father's chemist shop in Market Square, Barnsley. The warm sitting room behind the shop, with a dresser of colored china and sparkling glass, a large bookcase, and comfortable sofa and chairs, seemed a palace to the little room in which he now lived. A bed in one corner, a table, and a couple of chairs were his only furniture. He was lonely, too, eating his frugal meals by himself instead of sitting down to a well-spread table with his parents and two chattering younger sisters. He enjoyed teasing those sisters with their corkscrew curls and frilly frocks. He missed them, especially Amelia. He had come here in order to get accustomed to loneliness and hardship, so he was determined to stick it out. It was part of his preparation for living in China. Ever since the December evening, more than a year previously, when he had heard a voice saying to him, "Go for me to China," he had known that he must go. He was praying at the time when he heard the voice, and although China had not been in his thoughts at all, the command was so clear and unmistakable that he had no doubt it was from God. His determination to obey caused him to leave his congenial home at Barnsley to come and work for a doctor in Hull. A little medical knowledge and experience would be useful in a strange land, he decided, and this move to Hull was but the first step in his journey towards the Far East. There was more to this training than gaining medical knowledge. That was a small matter compared with another question which constantly confronted him. He knew no one in China, and he was going alone. Was his faith in God strong enough for him to go to a strange land and face difficulties and dangers he had never yet experienced? When I get to China, he thought, I shall have no claim on anyone for anything. My only claim will be on God. What if my faith isn't the right sort? Supposing my prayers don't work. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that he must learn to move men through God by prayer before he left England. To move men through God by prayer. The thought gripped him. Could it be done? Hudson wanted to find out. In a very simple, natural way, the opportunity to try it out was presented to him through his employer. Dr. Robert Hardy was a friendly, kind-hearted, vigorous man with a never-failing fund of good humor. It was said he made people laugh so much that they were cured of half their ailments without any medicines at all. With a large practice and many claims on his time, he was too busy to attend much to business details, and one day he said to his young assistant, "Taylor, please do not mind me when it's time for me to pay you your salary. Or please do remind me when it's time for me to pay your salary. I'm so busy, I'm quite likely to forget." He did forget. The time came when he was due to pay Hudson, and nothing was said. A day or two passed, and still no reference was made to the matter of his salary. Hudson was faced with two alternatives. He could ask the doctor for the money, or he could ask God. Knowing that when he got to China, he would have no one to ask but God, he decided to ask him now. Isn't that a really great idea? That was why, when he was down to his last half crown on the Sunday night when he gave it away to the That was why he was down to his last half crown on the Sunday night when he gave it away to the starving family. No wonder that when the golden half sovereign fell out of the mysterious packet the very next morning, he laughed aloud for joy. This was an adventure. He'd taken a risk to find out whether it worked, this idea of trusting God, and it had worked. Right in the nick of time, the money came. Money had come, and God alone knew who sent it. Hudson certainly did not. All he knew was that he had not gone without a single meal through trusting God, although it looked very much as though he might. He ate his last bowl of porridge. As he ate his last bowl of porridge, he felt like Elijah when the ravens arrived with dinner. That's a really great story in the Bible, by the way. You should go read it. It works. It works. Hudson set out from home, golden, half-sovereign in pocket, light-hearted and jubilant. Trusting God worked. Obeying God worked. It was a wonderful life, stimulating, exciting. Hudson might have been walking on air, he was so happy. However, he realized that half a sovereign would not last for forever. The main problem still remained, the payment of his salary. The cheerful, busy doctor might go on for months without remembering it, and the question was, would God remind him? Daily, Hudson prayed that the doctor might remember, and then went about his work and study, confident that something would happen. A week passed, and his money was disappearing steadily. Payment for his rent made quite a hole, but he had enough to last him until Saturday. Saturday came, the doctor said nothing. The day wore on with a heavy slowness, until by 5 o'clock all the patients had been attended to, and the doctor came into the dispensary and sat, while Hudson was boiling up some medicine. Evidently, he had no thought of the salary, and Hudson, carefully watching the mixture in the pan, made no reference to it. Then, quite suddenly, the doctor said, By the by, Taylor, isn't your salary due again?" Hudson gasped. After all, it was all right. Once more, when down to his last coin, the necessary money was coming. He gulped once or twice before replying quietly, "Yes, as a matter of fact, it was due 2 or 3 weeks ago." "Oh, I am so sorry," exclaimed the doctor. "Why didn't you remind me? You know how busy I am. I do wish I had thought of it sooner, for I sent all the money I had to the bank only this afternoon. Otherwise, I would pay you at once." Poor Hudson. The sudden dashing of his hopes was almost too much. It was as though a bucket of icy cold water had been thrown over him. Fortunately, the concoction in the pan he was watching boiled up, and he rushed with it from the room, glad for an excuse to get away. Once alone, he threw himself on his knees. His disappointment was so great, he could scarcely pray coherently. What his prayer lacked in coherence, however, it made up for in earnestness, and after a while he calmed down. Somewhat to his surprise, he found himself feeling quite cheerful again. God would certainly work for him, he thought hopefully, and although he had no money at all to pay his landlady the rent, even that knowledge did not unduly depress him. It was late when he prepared to leave the dispensary that evening. The hands of the clock had ticked slowly round until they stood at about 10 minutes to 10 when he started to put on his overcoat. "Well, my landlady will be in bed by the time I get back," he thought, "so I won't have to see her this evening and tell her I can't pay the rent this week." He walked over to the gas bracket, preparing to turn it off, when he heard the sound of footsteps outside. It was the doctor, and he was laughing heartily, as though greatly amused. "Why, hello, Taylor, are you still here?" he exclaimed. "What do you think? One of my patients had just come round to pay his bill. He's one of the richest patients I've got, and he could have paid me by check any time. Yet here he is, bringing the money round at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night." Hudson laughed. That a man rolling in money should come around himself to pay his doctor's bill at such a time was certainly unusual. What had possessed him? People were not usually so careful about paying doctor's bills. The doctor made his entry in the ledger and started back towards the door when he suddenly turned. "By the way, Taylor," he said, "you might as well take these notes. I have no change, but I can give you the balance of your salary next week. Good night." And Hudson, his pockets empty, was left standing in the dispensary with a handful of banknotes. His prayer was answered. Not only could he pay his landlady, not only had he money in hand for weeks ahead, but he had proved again that God answers prayer. There was no question about it now. He could go to China.